Welcome to our present state versus history on speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield. Well, hello, folks. Here we are again back on the pod. We're going over the principles of liberty, or some principles, not all of them, dealing with how the church and Christianity, or let's just say religion, plays a role in our republic that we have and the forefathers. We went over the morality of the people and what they thought was the greatest obstacle to overcome. And one of the things that they believed was key in getting the moral obligation to the place it needed to be within the society was religion. And George Washington and many of the founders, well, most all the founders, believed that morality and religion were necessary to keep things moving in the right standards in the political realm. We're going to deal a little bit with that today. And in fact, I don't know, this may go quite a while because this is one of the places where I dwell a lot of times. And so we may get hung up here for a while, if that's okay. But there's many resources out there of the role of ministry and clergy back in the days of the Revolution, and not just them, but throughout the whole history of the founding of this nation, and what kept us moving forward in the direction that we needed to go. There's a lot of folks out there. Dan Fisher, he's written a book called The Black Robe Regiment, or actually Bringing Back the Black Robe Regiment. It's a very good book. Goes over a lot of the historical aspects of the ministers of that day and some of the things that they had dealt with and went through, and shows how they were leading the front lines, if you will, as we move forward to resist the tyranny that came to this country, and declared through the pulpits that it was a righteous cause, that, you know, this ideology we have today of the separation of church and state, with trying to silence the church, is absolutely the wrong approach. And a lot of people are waking up to that finally. And Paul Blair and Dan Fisher, they're doing a work in Texas area down there and trying to restore the liberties. And myself, I've been involved with the Black Robe Regiment for quite some time now, through internet and different things. But it's an organization just of historical name. There's a lot of misnomers out there. Somebody asked me the other day what they were planning, like they were planning to take up arms and storm the Capitol or something. And that's not what it's about. It's about dealing with the situation at hand and awakening the people to who they are in this government and the control that they have, and trying to get back to the fundamental basics of what formed this country, so we can keep it from getting to a place where there's bloodshed. The Black Robe Regiment of the day in the 1700s, they did not want war. They were not the catalyst to push us into war, if you will. They tried their very best to prevent war. But at the same time, it is our God-given right and responsibility and duty, actually, to protect our life, liberty, and property. And as a minister of the gospel, as a head of your household, the very first responsibility that we have towards God is to protect our family and our life and our ability to move forward. So with that, we're going to get into the role of religion. Again, the National Center for Constitutional Studies is the proper name there, where they've got some, again, fabulous material for if you want to get into formal studies of the Constitution and the makings of the Constitution and the beginning of this country, and how the forefathers came to the understandings that they have. And through the many biographies from different authors of Woods and different ones, I'm using their information I mean, it's just history. It's not plagiarism of any kind. All this stuff is on public records, regardless if you use the biographies that were written by some of these folks that I'm reading or some of the others, or just go into the historical archives and read things like the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. And, you'll read some of these bios by these great historians. You're going to find the same story, just in different men's abilities to pronunciate that, I guess. And so, anyway, we're moving forward with that. And some of the definitions of the day that the founders of this nation understood was, one of them was the definition of religion. And the definition of what they believed religion was is not entirely the same as what sometimes I think our modern culture applies to it. What their definition of religion was a fundamental system of beliefs concerning man's origin and relationship to the cosmic universe, as well as his relation with his fellow man. And so they're looking at religion more as a broader spectrum as to our origin and our creator and where the cosmos universe. See, and you got to remember that these gentlemen have come together to form a government, not a church. And we've got a lot of rhetoric running around out there where they tried to say, that they were, against Christianity, or they weren't trying to promote one thing or another, which, if you look at it from a spectrum of one orthodox or one form of religion, then yeah, those things make sense. But the reality of it is, what they were trying to do is institute a government that was friendly towards all religion. Now, another definition was morality. Morality, they said, was a standard of behavior distinguishing right from wrong. Pretty basic, right? See, it's more than today. When we think of morality, our minds in this wild culture we live in immediately goes to sexuality. Well, sexuality is an individual, a part of morality, but it's not the sum whole of morality. The sexual misconduct and miscuity isn't really immorality as much as it is the indicator of immorality. Because if we have a system of behavior or a standard of behavior that is distinguishing right from wrong, then we know what we should do and what we shouldn't do, what's permissible and what's not. And then knowledge is another definition of terms that they have, which they considered that to be an intellectual awareness or understanding of established facts relating to any field of human experience or inquiry, such as history, geography, and science. So you see, from these definitions, we can see that their ideology of what religion's role was in the things of government, it wasn't, when they wrote the separation clause, which we're going to get into that here in a little bit, they were not trying to prevent the influence of religion upon the government. They were trying to prevent the influence of government upon religion. See, we have taken that to the point to where in our current day, they try to use that and say, well, if there's a separation between church and state, the famous phrase they like to use all the time, then that separation must be, complete and thorough both directions. Well, the reality of it is they weren't trying to separate religion from government. They were trying to eliminate the governmental influence over the religious beliefs and carrying out, so that men could certainly operate in their freedom of their religion. So George Washington, in his farewell speech, he said, "Of all dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail to the exclusion of religious principles. So what he's saying there is, if we exclude religion from our public lifestyle, then we will end up with no morality, because reason and experience both tell us that you can't have one without the other. And he's saying that religion and morality are the two indispensable supports of a happy, prosperous government. So we must operate. Remember Benjamin Franklin, we talked about when he was talking about moral and educated people, who said that the government would not succeed without a moral and educated people. And this is what he's talking about. The religious system that people ingrain into themselves of their origin and their relationship with the divine God, the divine creator, or the supreme being, whatever the terminology they want to use. See, the forefathers were trying to say, we're not going to limit that conversation as long as they have that fundamental relationship with that, and they have that understanding that it affects the relationship not only with God and the universe, but with each one of us individually. Then those things will drive us to a standard of behavior, of morality, that will teach us right from wrong. In other words, proper conduct towards each other. And the society that has moved out of those things, he says, let us not believe that with the supposition we're going to maintain strong government without those two. Because he knew what was necessary. And he's talking about, if you notice there, he says a national morality. He's not talking about individual choices for your own, what you want. He's talking about the national morality, the national conduct of our public behavior towards one another, and which our personal morality will influence that. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But he's not talking about controlling what the personal individual is doing in order to establish those ways and those things, as long as they are walking in that proper government as a whole, or proper control, if you will, relationship-wise, with each other and with the people around them. Because as long as that relationship is where it should be, then the government is going to prosper, and it's going to be positive, or happy, he called it, and move in the things it should be. They were so convinced of these things that they believed they should be taught in the school systems. They believed that religion, or the fundamental points of religion, should be incorporated into the daily teachings of the school. You remember, I don't know anymore, we've got this thing so out of kilter, I don't even know what they do as far as their morning days. But when I went to school, we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't remember them ever doing any praying. Now, I did have one class where one lady came in, and she was a substitute teacher, and she did a lot of praying. But as a rule, we didn't really directly focus on those things. But at the same time, it was a non-issue. Does that make sense? We said our pledge allegiance to the flag because we had a strong loyalty to the flag, and one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, was an easy thing to uphold because we had that strong religious moral foundation, or that system in place already. See, there was no contradiction there. And this was the point that they were trying to make when they were bringing these things together. There was 5 points that ran through almost all of the founders' writings in the systems of religion. And these 5 points are that there is a creator who made all things, and mankind should recognize and worship him. And the second point is the Creator has revealed a moral code of behavior for happy living, which distinguishes right from wrong. The third point is the Creator holds mankind responsible for the way that they treat each other. And the fourth point, all mankind will live beyond this life. And the fifth point is, in the next life, mankind is judged for their conduct in this life. Now, the forefathers had those 5 points should be taught in school, and they believed that those 5 points contradicted no form of religious worship at all, other than atheism. And George Washington warned us about atheism